Hi there. What I'm showing you today are some of the common breakdown points in dental advertising campaigns. What do I mean by a breakdown point? Basically, if you've ever invested in advertising and you do not feel that it performed adequately for you, generally speaking, that would be considered a breakdown. Meaning that something wasn't correct about the advertising, or was something correct, but there was something that wasn't measured to really determine and isolate the success or failure. It's a very delicate process to properly analyze and determine what causes the success, what causes failure, and what can cause confusion as well. What you're looking at here is just a brief sketch of these points, and I'm just going to go over each one of these with you. And of course, if you have additional questions or you feel you've run into any of these in any way, shape, or form, please feel free to reach out. I would be happy to answer questions for dental practices that have run into this. This first point here up at the top, you'll see that I have here demand, visibility, presentation, function. If you're familiar with my earlier content, which I highly recommend, get acquainted with VPF, which is visibility, presentation, function. I outline that in another video, and I've included a link to that below, and just so you can get oriented on that. So what this means here very simply is that you put out a campaign for a product or a service for your office, and let's just hypothetically assume there is no demand in your area for that product or service. That could be a failed campaign. Now, the second point is visibility. Did you get it in front of enough people? Was it exposed to enough people to really get the end result or target you were trying to achieve? Presentation. This is basically what you wear to a job interview. Did you represent yourself correctly? Are you properly represented on that promotion, in that campaign, whatever it might be, whether it's online digital advertising or a billboard or any other type of promotional piece. And then finally, we have function. Now, function is how one can interact and how easily it allows one to correspond and communicate to you with that campaign. In other words, a very simple, basic example, but let's say you had an online advertisement and a lot of people were seeing it and it looks great, but someone goes to contact you and let's say the phone number isn't working, or it's the wrong number, or the phone number doesn't exist, or there's just an online form, but they submit the form and there's another breakdown point that it doesn't make it to someone at the office. So there's a lot of technical things that can come up in this function process, but all these are key to modern dental marketing success. Second point here. So I'm just going to designate this number 1, and then we'll designate that number 2. Number 2, and I'll put 3 here so we can know where we are. Now, this is a inbound. In this arrow, just so you know, these arrows that I put here, these represent inbound, meaning somebody's reaching or looking toward you. That's the whole purpose of an advertising campaign, is to get someone to look at you, come to you, inquire, want more about your service, right? So on this point here, number 2, reception of communications. So we have to think about all the points, and this goes back to number 1 a little bit in the function point, but we want to think about anywhere where that incoming can break down. So you have a front desk, you have a phone ringing and a person picking up the phone. Something can break down at that point. Let's say that person on the phone isn't trained or oriented on the campaign special that you put out. And so someone goes, oh, I'm inquiring about the $99 new patient special. Let's just hypothetically say, they say, oh, I'm sorry, sir, we don't have that. That's a pretty gross example, but it's where it can break down. Or another simple breakdown at this phone point is that let's just let calls go to voicemail. Let's just let calls go to voicemail and not pick up the phone. And this happens every single day. So you have to be very careful when, and I'll get into this on the third point more, but you have to be very careful when diagnosing and trying to break down why an advertising campaign is failing or you think it has failed. All these points are valid to look at. Now we also jump into social media and website. Okay, so we covered the phone. So social media and website. Social media is an open access communication area. This is a place where millions upon millions upon millions of people every day are communicating. And tens of thousands of people are talking about medical experiences and referrals and such. So in this event, you have, let's say, an inbound question or inquiry that comes in from a social media network. Who's responsible for that? Who's watching that? This is another breakdown point. Now, when we think about modern advertising, it doesn't matter if you're digitally promoting online or you're doing a print advertisement of some kind. Statistics tell us that consumers today are going online and doing research. So you have to anticipate there's going to be online activity, and you have to be prepared to deal with and handle that online activity. And that goes the same for the website. The website is probably the most common landing spot for somebody doing research about a dental office. So, you have to think about all the elements of that. Again, going back to number one on the function presentation points, particularly if somebody already found you, those presentation and function points are key. The third point here is analytics analysis. Okay, so this is basically evaluating the statistical data you have from Google and analyzing the traffic, particularly, and I'm referring to digital advertising, and evaluating that data and looking at breakdown points in the data. For example, in my industry, we can determine the path that a new patient travels before they inquire to you for service. What do I mean by that? Meaning, let's say that somebody first searches in Google and then they find your website. And then we see that they jump to your social media profile. Let's say they jump to your Facebook page. Let's say 2 days later, now they search again, they look you up and they find an advertisement that you have in Google. So you've now had 3 points that somebody went through until they reached out to you. Now, of course, there could be some inbound reach at any point in that process, or it could take longer or more steps or more interactions they might have with other places, contact points, as we call them, online. These are places, touch points, right, where people land on and they see about you, they read about your business, and they go back and forth and they look at things and compare you to competitors and get all the data they can, and then say, okay, we're going to call on Monday morning, or they're just going to call, leave you a voicemail, or fill out a form on your website, whatever it is. So it's very important to understand these paths and this data, and there is a lot of data involved in this, even including things like how long people are spending on your website. Are they just coming on it and then leaving within seconds? That's an important piece of data to know, because if that's happening a lot, sometimes that can tell us there's a misalignment somewhere with the advertising and the website itself. So I'm just going to classify that as, it's just misevaluated or miscalculated data that can affect any one of the above. So the key in any successful advertising, particularly in our modern day digital advertising, it is extremely important to have all these points, and it's extremely important to evaluate overall correctly, because again, there are so many various breakdown points that can happen. And sometimes it's very easy to jump back to the advertising and say the advertising was the failure. But until all these other points are ruled out, then we can jump back to that. And again, it depends along the process. It could be the advertising was a failure. It could be, again, this presentation or point or the visibility wasn't in front of enough people, or it wasn't practiced correctly, or there was something else funny about it that was wrong. That could be the total breakdown point. But given that's all in, it could be number 2, it could be number 3, and there's others. So I hope this video was informative to you. I really enjoy evaluating. This is what I do for a living. I work particularly with dental offices and help them sort out their marketing situations. And I really love this because this really helps them, and it also helps marketing in general and the science of marketing, because that's what it's all about. It's all about getting the result and making it more of a predictable thing, more like a science, as opposed to, oh, well, we'll just do this and see what happens. No, we really want to know what we're going to do and why we're doing it, and get the result that's anticipated and target for that result. And, adjust things along the way as necessary. Again, if you run into any of these or have any questions, all contact info is below. Would love to hear what you might be running into, what you've run into. If you're a dental practice owner, please feel free to reach out. Jason Wydro here with Golden Dental Marketing and Wydro Media. You have a great day. Thank you so much for watching.